The city bus eased through the morning streets of Chicago beneath a sky heavy with rain clouds, its windows streaked with droplets that blurred the towering buildings outside into soft shades of gray. Most passengers had settled into the familiar rhythm of an ordinary, weekday commute. A construction worker rested his head against the glass. After finishing a night shift, a college student quietly highlighted notes for an upcoming exam. An elderly black woman clutched a reusable shopping bag in her lap while smiling at pictures of her grandchildren on her phone. Near the front, the driver kept both hands firmly on the steering wheel, greeting each passenger with the same calm professionalism that years behind the wheel had taught him. He believed every person who stepped onto his bus deserved to feel safe, even if they never exchanged more than a simple good morning. 3 rows behind him sat a young, black woman who looked as though she wanted nothing more than to disappear into the background. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, wearing a fitted olive-green t-shirt, blue jeans and clean white sneakers. Her curly hair was tied neatly into a ponytail, and there was nothing flashy about her appearance. She carried no expensive jewelry, no designer handbag, and no attitude demanding attention. She simply rested one hand on the leather leash beside her, while the other gently stroked the neck of the magnificent German Shepherd sitting perfectly at her feet. The dog was striking. His black and tan coat gleamed beneath the overhead lights. His ears stood tall and his alert, brown eyes quietly scanned the bus without a hint of aggression. Every movement was disciplined, controlled almost military in its precision. When children glanced toward him with curiosity, he remained calm when passengers walked past. He shifted only enough to give them room. His composure reflected years of remarkable training. The young woman leaned down and whispered something only the dog could hear easy. Atlas, the German Shepherd, responded by lightly pressing his head against her knee before returning his attention to the aisle. Across the bus, 2 Chicago police officers in full uniform were speaking quietly while heading toward the rear. After finishing an early patrol, they noticed Atlas immediately. "Beautiful dog," one officer said with genuine admiration. His partner nodded. "Looks like a service dog." The young woman smiled politely. He as the officers continued walking without disturbing her. It was a small interaction, barely noticed by the other passengers. Yet it reminded everyone that respect often begins with simple courtesy. The peaceful atmosphere lasted only another minute. At the next stop, the bus doors folded open with a hiss. 5 teenage boys climbed aboard together. Their loud voices filled the bus before they had even paid their fare. They wore matching denim jackets over black shirts, expensive sneakers, and confident smiles that suggested they had never been told no. Often enough, one carried a wooden baseball bat casually across his shoulders, as though it were part of his outfit, rather than something capable of frightening an entire bus. Another immediately raised his smartphone. "We're live!" His grin widened as comments began flooding the screen. "Let's make this ride interesting." Several passengers exchanged uneasy looks. The elderly black woman quietly slipped her phone into her purse. The construction worker opened one eye before deciding to stay out of it. The officers at the rear noticed the group as well. Instinctively observing without escalating the situation, the tallest teenager slowly scanned the bus, searching for someone he believed would make an easy target. His eyes stopped on the quiet young black woman sitting beside Atlas. He nudged his friend there. The others followed his gaze perfect. They laughed as they walked toward her row. The livestream camera never stopped recording. Thousands of strangers watched from behind their screens, while the comments climbed higher with every second. The lead teenager planted himself directly in front of the woman, forcing everyone nearby to notice. He looked down at Atlas with a mocking smile before tapping the end of the baseball bat against his own boot. "That's a nice dog," he said loudly enough for the entire bus to hear. "Let's see if he's as brave as his owner." The bus suddenly felt much smaller. Conversations faded, phones lowered. Even the steady hum of the engine seemed quieter, as every passenger sensed that an ordinary morning commute had just become something far more serious. The lead teenager smirked, as if the entire bus belonged to him. He rested the wooden baseball bat across one shoulder and glanced toward the smartphone, pointed in his direction, hearts laughing. Emojis and comments flooded the live stream, every second encouraging him to push even harder. To him, this wasn't just another prank. It was entertainment. The more uncomfortable someone looked, the more viewers stayed, the more money and attention he believed he would earn. Everybody say hello to today's main character, he announced, turning the camera toward the young black woman. The phone captured her sitting quietly beside Atlas, who remained perfectly still despite the growing tension around him. She hasn't smiled once. Another bully laughed. Maybe her dog forgot to teach her how. The others burst into laughter. The young woman didn't react. She simply rested one hand on Atlas's shoulder, her fingers moving gently through his thick fur. Anyone watching closely would have noticed something unusual. She wasn't comforting herself. She was calming the dog. Atlas's breathing slowed almost instantly. A mother sitting nearby quietly pulled her little boy closer. The child couldn't have been older than 7. He looked nervously toward the German shepherd before whispering to his mother, "Mom, are they going to hurt the dog?" His mother forced a reassuring smile, though fear had already settled in her own eyes. "I hope not, sweetheart." Near the rear of the bus, one of the Chicago police officers suddenly placed a hand near his radio while exchanging a brief glance with his partner. Years of experience had taught them that situations like this could change in seconds. They had dealt with enough disorderly passengers to recognize the difference between loud teenagers and people looking for someone to intimidate. For now, they chose patience. Good officers understood that sometimes the safest way to protect everyone was to observe carefully. Until intervention became necessary, the tallest bully stepped even closer. So he said with a grin, "Does your dog bite?" The young woman finally looked up. Her expression remained calm, no? The bully smiled wider good. He pointed the bat toward Atlas. "Maybe I'll teach him." A ripple of discomfort moved through the passengers. An elderly black woman stood from her seat, despite the obvious fear in her eyes. "Young man," she said firmly, "leave that woman and her dog alone." The teenager laughed without even turning around. "Sit down, Grandma." Before she could answer, one of the police officers calmly stepped forward. "That's enough." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The confidence in his tone immediately caught everyone's attention. "This bus is public transportation," the officer continued. "Every passenger has the right to travel without being harassed." The bully looked him up and down before forcing a fake smile for the live stream. "We're just joking, officer." The officer's expression never changed. "Good then, act like it." For a brief moment, the tension eased. The passengers quietly hoped the confrontation was over. The bullies exchanged glances. One of them whispered, "Forget it." But the leader wasn't interested in walking away. Thousands of viewers were still watching. His pride wouldn't let him stop. As the officers returned to the rear of the bus, believing the warning had worked, the live stream comments exploded again. "Scared, do something." "Touch the dog." The teenager's ego took over. He slowly turned back toward Atlas. The German shepherd never growled, never barked, never moved. His discipline seemed to frustrate the bully even more. What kind of guard dog just sits there? He mocked. The young woman answered quietly, "The kind that's been trained not to mistake arrogance for danger." A few passengers couldn't hide small smiles. The construction worker near the window chuckled under his breath. The bully's face tightened. He wasn't expecting confidence. He was expecting fear. The difference irritated him. He crouched slightly until he was nearly face to face with Atlas. The dog continued watching him with calm, intelligent eyes, no aggression. No panic, only patience. The young woman gently tightened her grip on the leash, not because she feared Atlas would attack, but because she knew exactly how much self-control, true strength required. She had spent years learning. That courage wasn't measured by how quickly someone fought back. It was measured by how long they remained disciplined when everyone around them expected violence. Quiet strength often protected more people than loud anger ever could. And on that crowded city bus, no one yet understood how much restraint they were witnessing. The teenager's smile slowly faded. For the first time since stepping onto the bus, he realized the quiet young black woman sitting in front of him wasn't reacting the way every other victim had. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She wasn't recording him for social media. She simply watched him with calm, unwavering eyes that somehow felt far more intimidating than anger. The live stream continued, climbing 42,000 viewers. One of the boys shouted excitedly, "Keep going, Trent." The comments rushed across the screen. "Scare the dog, she's bluffing." Hit the leash. The pressure from thousands of strangers pushed Trent's ego even further. He spun the baseball bat once before lowering its wooden tip toward Atlas's metal service tag. The sharp metallic clink echoed through the bus. Atlas's ears twitched, his muscles tightened, but he never barked the young woman immediately. Lowered one hand onto the German shepherd's chest. Her touch was gentle, steady, confident. "It's okay," she whispered. "You've already survived worse." The passengers exchanged confused looks. How could one sentence calm such a powerful animal so completely? The little boy sitting beside his mother looked up. "Mom, she talks to him like he's family." His mother smiled softly sometimes. She whispered, "Our greatest family isn't always human." Near the front of the bus, the two Chicago police officers quietly exchanged another glance. Officer Marcus Lewis had served nearly 16 years on the force. He had learned something important. During that time, people who constantly talked about how tough they were usually weren't people who stayed calm when everyone else panicked. Those were the ones he paid attention to. His partner leaned closer. "She's trained?" Marcus nodded almost immediately. "I think so too." The officers didn't interrupt. Instead, they quietly began positioning themselves so every passenger would have a clear path towards safety if things suddenly became dangerous. Real policing wasn't always about rushing into every confrontation. Sometimes protecting innocent people meant preparing before anyone realized protection was needed. Meanwhile, Trent wasn't finished. He leaned closer toward Atlas again. "What happened? I thought he was supposed to be some big, scary dog." Atlas simply looked back at him, calm. Focused, disciplined, the young woman slowly raised her eyes. Her voice remained barely above a whisper. "Strength isn't measured by how loudly someone reacts. It's measured by how much control they have." One elderly passenger quietly smiled. "That's wisdom," he murmured. One of the teenage bullies rolled his eyes. "She's talking like she's in some action movie." Another laughed loudly. "I bet she's never been in a real fight." The young woman never answered. Instead, she noticed something nobody else had. The reflection inside the bus window. A frightened, elderly black woman had quietly dropped her purse onto the floor while trying to protect her medication. A little girl farther back had wrapped both arms around her grandmother. The bus driver kept checking the mirror every few seconds, ready to radio dispatch if necessary. The two officers had already moved into positions that would shield the most vulnerable passengers first. In only a few seconds, she had silently assessed every person on the bus. Not because she was afraid, because protecting innocent people had become second nature. The bullies mistook her silence for weakness. The officers recognized it as discipline. Those two perspectives would soon collide. Trent suddenly reached toward Atlas's leash. The leather strap tightened slightly. Atlas remained exactly where he was. The young woman's hand stopped Trent's wrist with effortless precision, not violently, not dramatically, simply enough to prevent him from touching the dog. The movement lasted less than a second, yet Trent couldn't pull his hand away. His confident smile disappeared. His friends noticed first. "Yeah, why can't you move?" He laughed awkwardly. "I'm letting her hold me." The young woman quietly released his wrist. He instantly stumbled backward half a step. Nobody understood what had just happened, except Officer Lewis. His eyes narrowed. That wasn't luck. That wasn't fear. That was years of discipline. Training hidden beneath the appearance of an ordinary young woman. He quietly rested one hand near his radio. His partner whispered, "Should we move in?" Marcus answered calmly, "Not yet." "She's still trying to avoid a fight." The bus continued rolling through downtown Chicago, while heavy rain painted silver lines across the windows. Inside, every passenger had stopped looking at their phones. Nobody cared about emails anymore. Nobody cared about work. Every eye remained fixed on the quiet woman beside her, loyal German shepherd, because deep inside, everyone sensed they were witnessing something much bigger than an argument. On a city bus, they were watching courage choose patience over pride. They were watching trained officers protect without provoking. They were watching a young black woman prove that true strength doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself through restraint, wisdom, and the determination to keep others safe. And perhaps the most powerful lesson of all was this: real heroes don't look for fights. They look for every possible reason to prevent one. Before you continue to the next chapter, we'd love to hear from you. What would you have done if you were a passenger on that bus? Would you have spoken up, stayed silent, or trusted the officers to handle the situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read them, and many of our future stories are inspired by your discussions. If you're enjoying this story, let us know what kind of hero you'd like to see next. A veteran, a police officer, a firefighter, a martial artist, or an everyday citizen whose courage changes lives. Your feedback helps shape the next story, and your voice is part of this community